Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good morning, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. Hope you're all having a great start to your day. As it is with every week this month during Black History Month, we are now joined by News 8's digital reporter Matt Jarowski, and he's here to talk about his digital exclusive series on redlining across West Michigan, specifically here in Grand Rapids. It's a 4-part series, and the third part dropped on Sunday, and it involves the Auburn Hills neighborhood. So to dive a little bit more into that story, Matt has joined us on the live desk once again. Matt, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, Phil. Good morning.
Yes, no, and everybody that is watching us on Facebook, you do have access to that story right now. You can find a link to it in the description box as well as in the comment section. You click that link, you'll still be able to watch this live stream in its entirety. Me and Matt will be talking about the story, but you can also find this third installment as well as the first 2 installments, getting ready for that 4th one coming next Sunday. But Matt, for those who may just be checking into this series or really into this specific piece that dropped on Sunday, can you tell us a little bit more about the Auburn Hills neighborhood and its impact it had on redlining here in Grand Rapids?
Sure. So the Auburn Hills saga is a pretty important chapter of Grand Rapids history, specifically on the civil rights front. So let's rewind a little bit and kind of explain what redlining is. Coming out of the Great Depression, the federal program called the Homeowners Loan Corporation came up with this concept. They basically analyzed all these sales and looked at all these certain factors to determine which neighborhoods are the best investments, which neighborhoods are the worst investments as far as risk, to kind of help these banks that were hammered with fallen mortgages because of the Great Depression. So that tool was designed to help banks, but really became a tool that discriminated against immigrants and specifically people of color. So for decades after the Depression, neighborhoods in cities all across the country, including Grand Rapids, became more and more segregated. Black families particularly were only able to find housing in specific neighborhoods. The lower end of the, it's called redline because the lowest graded neighborhoods were circled in red. So black families were basically limited to, they could only get a mortgage for houses in those neighborhoods. So fast forward a number of years, there's a Supreme Court case in 1948 that rules that basically declares redlining illegal, but the process takes much longer to actually weed that out of the system. Even into the 60s, a lot of the loan operations and things that follow those redline maps are still in place. So Grand Rapids in 1960 was still extremely segregated. And that's where the Auburn Hills story comes into play. It's a group of 4 investors, they're black professionals. One was a dentist, a couple were educators. There are a lot of them were involved in the Grand Rapids Urban League. They were trying to come together to come up with a project that they could do that could help their community. And they came up with this idea. The city was selling a tract of land on the northeast side, and they wanted to buy it to develop it, allow families, both black and white, to build homes here. So the Auburn Hills neighborhood as we know it now, that's Fuller, Knapp and Fuller area between Ball, Sweet Street. It was 65 homes. It took the investors the better part of 2 years to actually be able to buy the land. They had to work against the city, fight with the city, as well as a lot of neighbors that were really upset and didn't believe the development would be a success and would drive down property values. A lot of bigotry involved in that fight as well. But the investors were able to win out and built a neighborhood for both black and white families. And it's still around today, and it's kind of a testament to that push forward.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just kind of, you mentioned that little bit of a fight between the investors and the city and the sellers of that land. Can you kind of just touch a little bit more on what went into sort of the process of buying that land to develop the Auburn Hills neighborhood?
Yeah, so originally the city put the land up for sale. The investor group was one of 3 groups to put in a bid, but the city kind of quickly realized that theirs was the only one that would actually work. The other 2 had what they call just like completely unacceptable demands. I know one of them wanted to put apartments on it, which wasn't properly zoned for, and there are, things like that that the city just wasn't ready to entertain. So really, the group of 4 investors were the only bid that made a lot of sense for that property. And when that moved through, the Sinking Fund Commission approved the sale. That's when a lot of neighbors surrounding that Auburn Hills neighborhood kind of raised their red flags. They were concerned. A lot of it pretty nakedly racist. Oh, if we have black families moving near here, no one's going to want to live here. Our property values are going to fall. Those kind of things. So they had to deal with that on top of the city commission dealing with those voices as well. There were multiple members of the city commission that were kind of caught in the middle. I know in the piece we specifically detail Evangeline Lambert's. I talked to her daughter. Evangeline since passed away, but her daughter still lives here in West Michigan, and talked about how her mom was miscast as racist because of her role in this fight. When you look at the media reports and what we know about Miss Lambert's, that was kind of not necessarily, that wasn't really the case. It was much more her concern that the developers would be able to succeed in what they were doing. She wasn't the only commissioner to voice the fact that she was concerned there wouldn't be enough local black families who could actually be able to afford to build and purchase homes in that development. She was really concerned they just wouldn't be able to fill it, and that it would impact the community that way. Thankfully, the sale was able to move through. It took them about another year to actually start building because of other issues with the cities, getting drainage stuff and all that kind of stuff sorted out. But by 1964, they were finally able to break ground, and now we have the neighborhood what it is today.
Right, and doing all this research into this specific neighborhood, and then you eventually did go out to Auburn Hills, grab a couple of photos, and really experience the neighborhood for yourself. What was it like stepping foot there, knowing that this was such a really monumental piece of land that was developed back, a couple of decades ago at this point?
Well, it's personal for me in a number of ways. I was born and raised in Grand Rapids, and I grew up just outside of that neighborhood. My dad was born in 1963, right in the thick of all this. His family lived a mile away from that neighborhood. So it's something that I'm very much, I was aware of the neighborhood. I've lived there. I've ridden my bike through the neighborhood countless times. But to learn the history of it, I only learned about it recently. And so it just provides a whole new view on things. So to go back and see the giant sycamore trees that, I know Carlton Street was one of the first to be developed, these giant sycamore trees that line the road that I don't know if they've been there since the 1960s when they first plotted that land, but they very well could be. And just knowing that the neighborhood that they fought so hard for is still there today.
Right, definitely. And Matt, this series has been super compelling, just reading every single article, even getting to sit down and talk with you on the live desk these past couple of weeks, and really seeing how your process works and everything else that maybe you couldn't fit in that story, and you bringing it out here on the live desk. But there is one more part coming out on Sunday. Can you give us a little bit of a sneak peek? You do this every time you come on the live desk, and we're building up anticipation for this last piece here. What is this final piece going to culminate in?
Sure. So this last piece will kind of tie a bow on redlining and its impact in Grand Rapids. It's kind of been the overarching, thesis of the series. We're going to work through the history of fair housing law, starting from 1930s when redlining first came to be, into the 1948 Supreme Court case, the Civil Rights Act of 64, and ultimately 68 that really kind of cemented fair housing practices as we know them today. Obviously, they've since been expanded. There's certain federal protections, as well as state protections and local protections. So we'll walk through all of that. And then I did an interview with the Fair Housing Commission of West Michigan, to talk about what does fair housing look like today. Obviously, there's still a lot of incidents that deal with race or national origin or skin color, but that's actually not the number one fair housing issue today. So I'll dive into that in the piece, what those typical claims look like, and where things stand.
Okay. All right, Matt. Well, we look forward to that final piece. And again, I do encourage everybody who hasn't checked out the third installment in Matt's redlining piece to go check that out right now. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can find a link to that in the description box and in the comment section below. And Matt, again, thank you so much for being here on the Wood TV Live Desk. Again, we are going to be doing another one of these, the last one regarding this specific series, next Wednesday as well. So Matt, thank you again for stopping by.
Thanks, Phil.
Yes, no, definitely. And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in to this latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Pinarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.